I clenched my coat tight and stood. They were lowering the casket. Thomas's casket. The wind cut through the churchyard like it had somewhere to be. My heels sank slightly in the grass, but I didn't move. The pastor spoke gently, words drifting away before they reached anything that mattered. I kept my eyes on the casket. He would have hated all this, the formality, the stiff prayers, the silence. Thomas was loud, quick to laugh, quicker to defend. His idea of a send-off was a charcoal grill and a cooler full of beer. This was for me, or maybe not even that, because I was alone. Brandon didn't come. My son. My only son. I told myself maybe the flight was delayed. Maybe there was traffic. Maybe he didn't want to make a scene by walking in late. But 23 minutes into the service, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Did you get the paperwork from the insurer? Yet Natalie says we need the $900K before venue lock-in. I read it twice, then locked the screen and slid the phone back into my coat. I didn't cry. Not at that moment. I just looked down at the dirt. It felt like a betrayal so sharp, it bypassed tears. The casket hit bottom with a low thud. The sound snapped through me. People began to drift forward one by one to drop flowers or say something at the edge. Most of them I barely knew, old co-workers, clients from Thomas's contracting business. The woman from the pharmacy. The man who used to mow his lawn. A few nodded to me on the way out. I nodded back. My hands stayed clenched in front of me, cold and stiff. The only person who lingered was Helen. She didn't say anything, just stood beside me and placed her gloved hand gently on my elbow. I felt the warmth through the fabric. I didn't move. You want a ride back? She asked softly. I drove. She nodded. I'll follow you home, just in case. I didn't argue. At home, I kicked off my shoes, dropped my coat on the hook, and walked into the kitchen. I filled the kettle, let it boil, then changed my mind and made coffee. The mug I pulled from the cabinet had a chip on the rim. Thomas used to call it my lucky cup. I filled it to the top and sat at the table. The silence wrapped around me like a coat I hadn't asked for. I didn't open Brandon's text again. Didn't answer the follow-up. Natalie says the caterers are holding the price for 3 days. We need to move. Move. Like this was a deadline. Like I was a speed bump. I sipped. The coffee was bitter. I didn't care. There were papers in the drawer beside me. Insurance. The death certificate. The last check Thomas had written to a local food pantry. He'd scribbled, "Don't let him close," on the memo line. He wasn't perfect, but he showed up. I sat there until the coffee went cold. Then I stood, grabbed the envelope with the insurance paperwork, and carried it to my room. I slid it into the locked box at the back of my closet. I'd give him time. Brandon. He'd call maybe, realize what he missed. But I wasn't going to remind him, and I wasn't going to chase him. The next morning, there was a knock at the door. I opened the door. No one was there. Just a package, white box, no card. I picked it up, brought it inside, and set it on the kitchen table. I didn't open it. It wasn't from Brandon. I turned off my phone for the rest of the day. No one called the landline. I cooked a small pot of soup, not because I was hungry, but because Thomas would have told me to eat. I set 2 bowls out. Habit. Then scooped one back into the pot and ate in silence. After dinner, I sat down at the kitchen table with a stack of blank note cards. 26 names. Thomas's co-workers, old clients, neighbors. Every one of them had shown up to the funeral. Some brought flowers, some brought hugs. One of them slipped me a grocery gift card and said, "He always looked after us." I started writing. "Dear Marjorie, thank you for coming to Thomas's service. Your kindness meant more than I can say." My hand cramped by the 8th card, but I kept going. No one offered to help. Brandon didn't ask. Natalie didn't call. I checked her Instagram. Late that night, she and Brandon were at a vineyard in Oregon, posing with champagne flutes. Caption, Venue number 3. The view is breathtaking. Fingers crossed. We get the date. Her nails were white and sharp. Her smile was big. Brandon stood beside her in a tailored shirt, grinning like he hadn't skipped his uncle's funeral to chase scenery. I looked at the timestamp. Posted 5 minutes ago. I shut the phone off again. I washed the dishes, tied up the trash, fed the neighbor's cat like I promised. Then I stood in the hallway and stared at the door to Thomas's old room. I hadn't opened it since the hospice nurse closed it behind her. I turned the knob. Stepped in. The bed was still made. Same blanket, same indentation in the pillow. I stood in the doorway and didn't touch anything. I just looked. That room had held so much noise, jokes, arguments, sports commentary, rants about politics. It was quiet now. Too quiet. I sat on the edge of the bed and let the silence come. That night, I didn't sleep. I folded laundry, matched socks, scrubbed the microwave, things that didn't need doing. The next morning, I made a list. Groceries, mulch for the flower beds, a new light bulb for the hallway. I crossed off nothing. At 4:12 p.m., the doorbell rang again. I dried my hands and opened it. A man in a brown uniform handed me a clipboard. Delivery, he said. Same handwriting on the label. I signed. Brought the box inside. Still no card. I placed it next to the first one and went back to the kitchen. I poured fresh coffee into the same chipped mug and looked out the window. The yard needed trimming. The hydrangeas were overgrown. I didn't move. My hands stayed folded on the table. Not frozen. Not idle. Just done. The phone rang. I let it ring out. The next morning, I put on my coat and drove across town. I unlocked the front door and stepped aside. Brandon walked in first. Natalie followed, heels clicking like she was already late for something else. She didn't even glance around. "I'll just take a peek at the guest room," she said, peeling off her coat and walking down the hall like it was her name on the deed. I didn't stop her. I just walked into the kitchen and started the coffee. Brandon stood in the doorway, hands in his jacket pockets, eyes scanning the room like he hadn't sat at that table 100 times growing up. "Smells the same," he said. I didn't answer. The coffee finished. I poured 2 mugs, placed them on the table. They stayed untouched. He didn't sit. "She thinks the room would make a great dressing suite," he said finally. "Just during the engagement period. The lighting's great for fittings." I folded the dish towel in my lap. He cleared his throat. "But that's not why we came. Natalie said it's time we talk about the policy." He didn't say Thomas's name, just the policy. I stared at the steam rising off the untouched mugs. "She's already found a venue," he continued. "They need a deposit. Full payment within 60 days. The life insurance, it would cover most of it." I kept folding the towel. Once. Twice. "You were the beneficiary," he said like I needed reminding. "Uncle Tom wouldn't have minded. You know how he felt about family." I finally looked up. "He left it to me." Brandon shrugged. "Right. But you don't need that much. You've got the house, Social Security. You've downsized everything already. I haven't downsized anything." Natalie walked in smiling. "The guest room has such good bones. I'd only needed a few months. We'd keep it clean." Brandon took a breath. "We could move in, just for a while. Save on rent. Help with bills." "I'm not behind on bills." "Still," he said, "you don't need all this space anymore." I took a slow sip of my coffee. It had gone lukewarm. Natalie's phone buzzed. She picked it up. Smiled. "Venue's holding the date another week, but we need to secure it. Brandon." He nodded. "Can you get us the paperwork by tomorrow?" "Just the contact. We'll handle the rest." They didn't ask how I was. They didn't ask how I slept, if I'd eaten, if I'd heard from Thomas's lawyer. They came for the money. They sat in my house, sipped nothing, and planned their wedding on my brother's death. I stood, picked up their mugs, walked to the sink, Water ran hot. I rinsed the mugs clean. Behind me, Natalie laughed. This kitchen could really use an update. Quartz countertops would be stunning. I turned off the water, dried my hands. They didn't notice. When they left, Brandon kissed my cheek. Natalie air hugged from the porch. I stood at the door long after they drove off. Then I walked to the back of the house and opened the file cabinet. I ripped the envelope open. Gas bill. Higher than last month. Tucked underneath was a flyer from the funeral home. Standard printout. Thank you for choosing Lanefield Memorial. We hope our services brought peace during this time of loss. The paper was creased. Folded wrong. Someone had shoved it back in with the mail. Not Brandon, not Natalie. I set it aside. Picked up the next envelope. Credit union statement. Still untouched insurance money. Still in my name. I poured a cup of coffee. Let it go cold. Around noon, I walked out front to bring in the trash bins. Natalie's voice drifted across the street. She was on speakerphone pacing her mother's front yard, laughing lightly. No, we're not doing anything huge, just private. A nice dinner for our side. She paused, then softer. No, not her. It's complicated. I mean, she's not super social. You know she stopped pacing. Brandon says she's still processing the whole thing. We don't want her energy to bring things down. I stepped back behind the hedge. Her energy. I waited until she went back inside before crossing the street again. Inside, I folded laundry, watered the plants, took the meatloaf out of the freezer, then put it back. I didn't want to cook anymore. I didn't want to host. I used to be the one who sent invitations, the one who brought desserts in glass dishes and folded napkins into fans. I'd throw bridal showers, baby showers, retirement brunches. Now I wasn't being told. I went to the closet, pulled down the box with old cards. Brandon's kindergarten drawing. To Mom, my first best friend. A photo of him in 8th grade holding the baseball trophy. I stayed up 3 nights sewing patches on his uniform for. I sat on the carpet, touched the edge of the photo. Complicated. That was the word she used, the word you reach for when you want someone erased but politely. I stood, put the box back, closed the closet. That evening, the doorbell rang. Another package. Smaller this time. I brought it in. No return address, no card. Inside, white satin hangers. 3 of them. Monogrammed with gold thread. Bridesmaid. Maid of honor. Mother of the groom. Mine wasn't there. I put the hangers back in the box. Later, I opened my laptop. Checked the funeral guest list again. Only 4 signed the digital book. None from Brandon's side. I clicked through to the funeral home's follow-up site. There was a feedback section. I typed a note. Please remove this obituary page from public view. Family has chosen to grieve privately. I clicked submit. Logged out. The house went dark. I didn't turn on a single lamp. I sat at the kitchen table, fingers resting on the surface. The insurance policy was still in the folder, untouched. My name typed clearly in bold twice. I folded the folder closed. The next morning, I took out the checkbook. I pulled the drawer too hard. Papers spilled sideways, envelopes scattered, one slid under the chair. I knelt, gathered them. Electric bills, tax returns, Brandon's old report cards, a yellowing warranty for a fridge I no longer owned. Then I saw it. Blue folder, stiff with age, tucked flat beneath a stack of Thomas's pension statements. Labeled in his handwriting, Final Revision, April. I sat on the floor, legs crossed, the folder in my lap. Inside, policy copies, notes in the margins. One post-it that said, Eileen gets everything, don't let it get messy. At the bottom, stapled pages, notarized, signed in ink. Change of beneficiary, Thomas J. McAdams. Effective immediately, all life insurance payouts and designated assets to be released to Eileen R. McAdams. Relationship sister. No contingent beneficiaries listed. I read it twice. Then a third time. His signature, a witness, a seal. I held the paper close. My hands didn't shake. The last time we spoke, Thomas said, "You've already buried more than anyone should. Let me do this one thing right." I hadn't known what he meant. Now I did. I placed the folder on the kitchen table. I made coffee. Sat. Read every word of every page. It was airtight. No Brandon, no Natalie, no fine print hiding their names. Just mine. Just me. I slipped the papers back into the folder, carried it to my bedroom, opened the old jewelry box I kept receipts in, slid the folder beneath the felt tray, closed the lid. No one had asked me about the money since their last visit. They assumed I'd hand it over. They thought I was grieving, passive, malleable. They didn't know Thomas had put it all in writing. I didn't text Brandon. I didn't respond to Natalie's email about RSVP counts. I vacuumed the guest room, washed the sheets, folded them into the linen closet. The door stayed closed after that. At the grocery store, I ran into Carol from church. She asked if I was okay. I told her I was tired, but I was all right. She squeezed my hand. "He was good to you, your brother." I nodded. "He still is." That night I sat on the porch. No lights on inside. Just the folder in the drawer upstairs and my hands on a cooling mug of coffee. They were going to ask again. They always did. He showed up unannounced. Didn't knock. Just let himself in like he used to in high school, back when he still needed rides and gas money. Thought I'd swing by? Brandon said, dropping his keys on the hall table. "Natalie's doing a venue tour, so I had time." He didn't ask how I was. I followed him into the kitchen. He opened the fridge, grabbed a soda, leaned against the counter like he lived here. "I wanted to circle back on the trust stuff," he said, casually sipping. "Natalie's parents are covering the rehearsal dinner, the videographer, and half the bar tab." He said it like a gift. I nodded. "That's generous." He smiled like I'd passed a test, which is why we really want the rest of it to hit a certain standard. You know, set the tone right. Her dad's a financial advisor, her mom runs the charity wing at a bank. They're used to a certain level. I sat down, and he shrugged. And I figured, "Look, you're not using that money, Mom." My fingers tapped once against the armrest, then stopped. "I mean, it's just sitting right." Thomas would have wanted it to go towards something meaningful, something joyful. He didn't say someone. He said something. "You think a wedding is joyful," I said quietly. He raised his eyebrows, missing the tone. "Exactly. It's our chance to step up. Show we belong at that table, that family." "Besides," he added, finishing the soda and tossing it into the sink, "I told Natalie you'd be practical about it." I said, "My mom gets it. She's not going to cling to idle cash." Idle cash. He said it like I was hoarding spare change under the mattress. I stood, took his can from the sink, rinsed it out, dropped it in the recycling bin. He didn't say thank you. He rubbed the back of his neck. "Venue hold is 90 grand. Deposits due next month. Catering minimum is 50. And there's the dress Natalie's mom offered to help, but the designers booked through the fall." I kept my hands flat on the counter. He looked at me. "You okay?" I nodded once. Then he smiled. Big, wide. "Knew you'd understand. I'll pull the paperwork together for the transfer. Natalie's dad said he could help expedite things through his guy." His guy? I almost asked what Brandon had ever expedited for me. But the words didn't come. He checked his phone. "Gotta run." "Oh, Natalie was talking about doing a spa day with the bridesmaids. You don't have to come, of course, unless you want to. No pressure. No pressure." He kissed my cheek on the way out. The door shut behind him. I stood alone in the kitchen next to the empty fridge, the recycled can, the counter that still bore Thomas's burn mark from a pan he once forgot. I boiled water, poured a cup, sat at the table. The folder was still upstairs, still untouched, still mine. Helen called during breakfast. I just came back from West Point Mall, she said. Ran into Natalie and her mother outside that boutique near the salon. You know the one? I waited. They were carrying dress bags, laughing, talking fast. Natalie said, once we get the money, I want to do the fittings in the city. No more small town stuff. Her mother said, that's smart, honey. You want it all set before the deposit clears. She paused. They didn't see me. I pressed the edge of my coffee cup to my lip. Didn't drink. They already think it's theirs, Helen said quietly. I thanked her, changed the subject, asked about her back, the weather, the neighbor's dog. We hung up. I set the phone down. The coffee went cold. 2 hours later, Brandon called. Quick question, he said. We're filling out some forms. Tax paperwork. They need your social security number for the transfer. I didn't speak. It's standard. Natalie's dad said the IRS gets weird about family-to-family gifts over a certain amount. If we document it now, it's cleaner later. Protects you, too. He talked fast, like he'd rehearsed it. Do you have it handy? I got up, walked to the desk drawer, opened it. Pulled out the manila envelope where I kept every document that mattered. I read the number to him 1 digit off. He repeated it back. I confirmed. Perfect, he said. I'll text if they need anything else. He hung up. I sat down, wrote the real number on a sticky note, folded it, slipped it behind the folder with Thomas's signature. They didn't want permission. They wanted process. Something that sounded official. Something they could say was already in motion. They hadn't asked if I'd decided. They hadn't asked if I was grieving. They hadn't asked if I needed anything. I opened my banking app, reviewed the life insurance transfer, noted the routing chain, saved the PDF for the final deposit confirmation. Then I logged out. I printed the PDF, put it in the same folder as the notarized amendment. Closed the drawer. Upstairs, Natalie's laughter echoed faintly from her latest Instagram story. A video of her trying on shoes. Too chunky, she said, spinning for the mirror. But once we get the money, I'll get the real ones. Her voice was bright, certain, like she'd already bought them. I turned the phone face down, opened my notebook, and wrote the date in the corner of a clean page. I opened the door before she knocked. Natalie's mother stood on the step in pearls and perfume, holding a bakery box in one hand, a large envelope in the other. Oh, good you're home, she said. Thought I'd swing by while I was out. Brought lemon cake. Natalie says it's your favorite. She didn't wait for an invitation, just stepped inside like she'd done it a dozen times. She hadn't. I led her to the kitchen. She placed the box on the counter, then the envelope on the table. Neat, deliberate. Thought we'd get this out of the way, she said, sliding the envelope toward me. Just saves time later. I opened it. A check transfer authorization form. Pre-filled. Brandon's name in the recipient box. Her name in the witness line. I figured we'd make it easier for everyone. I can notarize it later this afternoon if needed. My cousin runs a title office. I didn't touch it. She reached into her purse, pulled out a pen. Won't take long. I poured coffee instead. Set 2 mugs on the table. One for her, one for me. She didn't drink. Of course, she said, voice syrupy. If you prefer the attorney route, we can arrange that too. I just thought we'd keep things in the family. I looked at her. This woman didn't ask how I was. Didn't mention Thomas. Didn't ask about the funeral. Just walked into my house with cake in one hand and paperwork in the other. I folded the form and slid it back into the envelope. Slowly. Carefully. I appreciate the cake, I said, but I won't be signing anything today. Her smile froze just for a second. Oh, no rush, she said. We just want everything squared away before the venue deadline. You know how vendors are. Deposits. Timelines. She sipped her coffee. Winced. Too bitter for me, I'm afraid. I didn't respond. She pushed her chair back. Well, I'll leave the envelope here just in case you change your mind. No pressure. We're all family. At the door, she hesitated. Brandon said you'd understand. I nodded. I did understand. She left the cake on the counter. I watched her drive away, then lock the front door. Back in the kitchen, I opened the envelope again, removed the check form, tore it in half, then again and again until the pieces fit in my palm. The cake went in the trash. Upstairs, I opened the drawer, moved Thomas's folder forward, placed the torn check request behind it. I picked up my phone, searched my contacts, found the name I hadn't touched in 6 years, Mark Feldman, estate attorney. I pressed call. The line rang twice before his assistant answered. Feldman Law Group. Tell him Eileen Vance called, I said. I'd like to set a meeting. Quietly. I let the phone ring. Brandon's name lit up the screen for the 3rd time that morning. I watched it vibrate across the table, then silenced it. A minute later, a message came through. We're stalling because of you. I didn't answer. Natalie posted a photo of a chandelier showroom gleaming glass fake elegance. The caption read, "Family should support your dreams, not block them." I read it once, then again. Support. They wanted support like a ladder wants weight. Step on it, climb up, never ask if it breaks underneath. I closed the app and slid the phone away. The office of Rachel Chen sat between a pediatric dentist and an empty yoga studio. No signage, no glass door, just a buzzer and a laminated note. By appointment only. I pressed it. A voice crackled on the speaker. Ms. Vance? I gave my name. The lock clicked. Inside, the air was still and cold. Her office smelled faintly of old paper and newer coffee. Rachel stood when I entered. Mid-40s. Blunt haircut. No nonsense. She didn't ask why I was there. Just nodded toward a chair and said, "Show me what you brought." I slid Thomas's folder across the desk. She opened it slowly, read every line, flipped through insurance disbursements notarized amendments, a receipt from the bank dated 6 weeks ago. "Does your son know you're listed sole beneficiary?" she asked finally. "No." "Has he filed anything under the assumption he is—" "I believe so." She nodded. "And you haven't signed anything?" "No." She folded her hands. Then, we moved quietly. For the next hour, we rewrote the structure. A revocable trust in my name. Segmented accounts, automatic legal triggers if challenged. A no-contest clause for any heirs who disputed intent. Rachel worked fast, eyes sharp behind her glasses. Every sentence she wrote closed a loophole. By the end, we had signatures. Seals. Digital copies encrypted and emailed to her office's secure vault. She stood to shake my hand. "You're not blocking anything. You're protecting what's yours." I nodded. Driving home, I passed a billboard advertising a wedding expo. Natalie's face might as well have been on it. Back in my kitchen, I reheated coffee that had gone cold 3 times that day. I didn't drink it. The phone buzzed again. Brandon. Voicemail this time. "I don't know what the holdup is, Mom. This isn't about you. It's about me and Natalie getting a real start. You want to be part of that, right? Then help us make it happen." I saved the message, forwarded it to a folder marked Trust Evidence. Then I opened my drawer, moved Rachel's file next to Thomas's, lined the edges up until they sat flush, and waited. I snapped the cabinet lock shut. 2 clicks. 1 turn. Done. Helen stood a few feet back, arms crossed, eyes sharp. She hadn't asked questions when I called that morning. Just showed up with gas in the tank and coffee in hand. "You sure?" she asked. I nodded. The manila envelope inside held everything. Rachel's documents, the new trust structure, the letter from the estate office confirming full legal authority over Thomas's assets, transfer locks, account clauses, irrevocable designations. My name. Only mine. "He signed it," I said. "Months before he got sick. I just never thought I'd need to use it." Helen stepped forward. placed her hand gently on the cabinet. Then use it right. She didn't mean spend it. She meant steer it, control it, protect it. We sat at the kitchen table. I poured the coffee. Neither of us drank. They're still calling, she asked. Not today, I said. Maybe they feel the shift. Natalie hadn't posted in 24 hours. Unusual. Brandon had gone silent since the voicemail. Not even a follow-up text. I didn't mistake the silence for peace. I knew what came next. Pressure. Questions disguised as concern. Legal terms they didn't understand. The implication that time was running out. Helen took a sip finally. What are you going to do? I didn't answer right away. I reached under the table, pulled out a stack of wedding catalogs Brandon had left on my counter 2 weeks ago. Satin ribbons, venue maps, bar package comparisons. I set them on the table. Helen flipped one open. A circle drawn around a ballroom shot $40K minimum dream setting. Who's dreaming? She muttered. I placed the catalogs into a brown paper bag, folded it closed, tossed it in the recycling bin. They keep thinking I'm stalling, I said. Like I'm indecisive. Or afraid. Helen tilted her head. You're not. No, I said. I'm patient. She smiled. So now what? I wait, I said. Let them keep assuming. Let them think the money's already theirs. Let them plan the menu. You're going to let them plan a wedding you won't fund. Exactly. She leaned back. That's bold. It's legal, I said. And quiet. They want a scene, I'm not giving them one. We didn't speak for a moment. The house felt still. Clean. Mine. I opened the drawer again, ran my hand along the file labels, Rachel's trust folder, Thomas's amendment, the PDF bank logs, everything in order. Helen looked over her voice, low. Does Brandon know yet? No, I said. No one does. Except her. I showed up 10 minutes early. Not out of eagerness, out of calculation. The country club parking lot shimmered under late afternoon sun. White linens flapped on cocktail tables. Waiters aligned flutes in straight rows. Someone had spent a lot of money to make this feel effortless. Natalie's mother greeted me at the entrance with a brief smile and a long look at my shoes. Eileen, she said. So glad you could come. She didn't ask how I was. Didn't mention Thomas. Didn't say she was sorry. I followed her in. The first thing I noticed wasn't the room. It was the sign, Brandon plus Natalie. Our forever begins in gold script. Below it, a printed seating chart. I scanned the names. My name in small font sat at the bottom right. Table 7. Far from the head table. Sandwiched between someone named Marla and an out-of-town cousin from Natalie's side. I took a photo. No reason. Just habit now. Inside, laughter carried too easily. Toasts began before all the guests were even seated. A man with perfect teeth raised a glass and shouted something about legacy. Someone else chimed in about families uniting. Brandon stood beside Natalie, arm around her waist, grinning like he owned the air in the room. He didn't see me. Or maybe he did, and looked away. I found table 7. The people there nodded politely. We exchanged nothing more. One woman asked if I was from Brandon's father's side. I'm his mother, I said. Her mouth froze in the shape of a smile. The toasts rolled on. One by Natalie's uncle, then her mother, then her best friend from college who described them as a power couple built to last. Champagne clinked. Camera shutters clicked. Then from somewhere behind me, a voice whispered, She's just the aunt now, right? I thought the mom passed. Someone shushed them. I didn't turn around, didn't stand, didn't say a word. Instead, I reached into my bag, found my notebook, wrote a single line. They've written you out already. Then I closed it. At one point, Brandon stood to speak. He looked nervous, grateful, rehearsed. I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been here for us, believed in our future, and supported our decisions. The word support hung heavy. He glanced toward me, quick, hollow, then turned back to the mic. Natalie kissed his cheek. People applauded. I didn't. The waiter refilled my water. I didn't touch it. They served cake. I declined. Photos resumed. When the music started, I slipped out. No goodbyes, no thank yous. Outside, the air felt different, cleaner, honest. I sat in my car, checked the photo of the seating chart. I zoomed in on my name, then I deleted it. I didn't need proof. I already knew. I signed the clause with a pen that didn't shake. The notary didn't ask questions, just pointed where to initial, where to date, where to affirm. I nodded, signed, sealed. The air in her office smelled like toner and cold coffee. It was the most honest place I'd been in months. Clause D, subsection 4. No portion of this trust may be distributed for wedding-related expenses, real estate ventures, or private loans before January 1st, 2035. I watched her stamp it. Once, twice, done. She handed me my copy. I folded it, slid it into the blue folder marked final, and zipped it shut. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud, no announcements. No one saw me leave. Back in the car, my phone lit up. Brandon, 3:14 p.m. Did you call State Mutual yet? 3:22 p.m. Natalie needs numbers for the caterer. 3:29 p.m. We're trying to lock in the designer. They're offering us a $15K discount if we book this week. 3:32 p.m. Can you please update us? I scrolled, thumb resting on the keyboard. Didn't type a word. Let the screen go dark. On the drive home, I passed the bakery Thomas loved, the one with the mismatched chairs and the strong coffee. I parked, walked in, ordered as usual. 2 sugars, splash of cream. No one waited behind me. No one rushed me. I sat in the back booth, opened my notebook, drew a single check mark on the next blank page. One done. The coffee burned a little going down, but it cleared my head. By the time I pulled into my driveway, 6 new messages waited. Brandon again. Natalie. Even her mother. Different tones, same urgency. Eileen. We just need to get this part moving. It's your call, of course, but we're already planning around the estimate. The caterer needs confirmation by Friday. We're assuming everything's in place. I didn't respond. Instead, I printed a second copy of the amended trust. Put it in the fireproof cabinet, right behind the manila envelope Helen had seen. I labeled it active, 2035 hold. I shut the drawer. The silence felt different now. It wasn't absence. It was armor. They didn't know the door had moved. They were still pounding on the old one. I poured myself a second cup, sat at the kitchen table, watched the evening light shift across the floorboards. Outside, kids biked past. One of them laughed like Thomas used to when we dared each other to jump from the swing's highest point. I didn't smile, but I didn't cry either. Brandon's last text came just after 6. This wedding is a huge step forward for us. Don't you want to be part of it? I stared at the screen. Then I opened my notes app, typed one line. What they want isn't a mother. It's a checkbook with a soft voice. I closed the phone. Stood. There were 3 more calls I needed to make before the weekend. I opened the door before she knocked twice. Natalie stood there all gloss and glow, holding a pink box with a white ribbon and a grin that didn't reach her eyes. Hi, Mom. She sang like she'd been calling me that her whole life. I thought I'd stop by with something sweet. She stepped in before I said a word. The box landed on my counter. Sugar cookies perfectly round, frosted in pastel icing. Tiny edible pearls lined the edges. Too pretty to eat. Too calculated to miss. I made them myself, she said. Brandon told me you used to love baking. Used to. She kept talking, giggled. Complimented the curtains she once called dated. Sat in the chair she once asked Brandon to remove. We've been thinking, she said, brushing a stray hair from her cheek, about the wedding. I really want you to be a part of it. I mean, I know it's been rocky. I nodded slowly. She leaned in. Would you consider doing a reading at the ceremony? Something classic, maybe Corinthians? I want the guests to see the whole family together. It matters. Her tone was sugar-laced, but her words were all stage direction. I poured her coffee. She didn't drink it. She tapped her manicured nails against the cup. Brandon says you're still finalizing the trust details. No rush, of course. But once it's ready, we can finally move forward. I smiled. That's kind of you to include me. She beamed, mistaking surface for surrender. You're important to us, she said, standing. You've always been part of the plan. I walked her to the door. She hugged me. One arm. Cold perfume. No weight behind it. Thanks for hearing me out, she whispered. I locked the door behind her. Stood still. Listened to the silent stretch. Then I picked up the box of cookies. Opened the lid. Pink, blue, ivory. Each one stamped with cursive icing, Hope, Love, Family, Forever. I closed the lid. Tossed them in the trash. The sweetness had a smell too clean, too eager. Back at the table, her untouched cup sat cooling, her lipstick on the rim. I washed it. Dried it. Put it back in the cabinet like nothing had happened. I took out my file again. Checked the clause. Still there. Still mine. I added a note under today's date. Visit from Natalie. Wedding invitation extended. Cookies delivered. Smiles forced. Motive clear. I closed the file. Set it back in the drawer. Turned the lock. Outside, her car pulled away. Music playing. Windows down. Inside, I made myself a fresh pot of coffee. Black. No sugar. I walked in and saw the candles first. White linen. Gold-rimmed plates. A priest. Brandon stood. Smiled too wide. We wanted to make tonight special. Natalie kissed my cheek like we hadn't gone silent all week. A bottle of champagne chilled in a silver bucket. 2 flutes, already poured. The priest nodded politely. Ms. Klein, a pleasure. I sat. The napkin was folded into a rose. The roast smelled expensive. A document sat to the right of my plate, nestled between the bread plate and a decorative menu. Natalie cleared her throat. We thought, rather than more back and forth, we'd just formalize things. Nice and clean, everyone on the same page. Brandon added symbolic, really. Just a gesture. Not even legally binding. My fingers stayed still. The priest smiled. I was told this would be a simple blessing, just a recognition of commitment and family support before the engagement is made public. He gestured to the contract. Would you like me to read it? Brandon cut in. It's just a joint statement, a show of family unity. Her signing it helps with some upcoming filings. Taxes, estate transparency, that kind of thing. Natalie laughed lightly. Plus, it'll really impress my uncle. He's old school. I reached for my water, not the champagne. Brandon watched closely. It doesn't override anything, Mom. You keep full control of the trust. It's just optics. Natalie nodded. A shared understanding. Your name and signature would show we're a team. They had it rehearsed. Every word felt choreographed. I glanced at the contract. Vague phrases, soft language, nothing specific, but the kind of nothing that could be twisted into anything. Do you want to read it over? First, Natalie offered. We can give you space. I smiled. No need, I said. They exhaled too quickly. I slid the contract aside, unfolded the napkin, took a bite of the roast. Brandon blinked. So, you'll sign. I swallowed. Sipped. Set the fork down. No, I said gently. But thank you for dinner. Natalie's mouth hung open for a beat too long. Brandon looked at the priest, then at me. Why not? I looked at the glasses, the papers, the empty gesture dressed in crystal and lace. Because nothing important happens in silence, I said. I stood, placed the napkin on the plate, straightened my jacket. Brandon stepped forward. Mom. I kissed his cheek. Good night, I said, and walked out before they could decide how to react. The air outside was cold. My hands didn't shake. Not even once. Helen was waiting in the car. They try anything she asked. I nodded. They set the table. I just didn't eat what they served. She started the engine. Neither of us said another word until we pulled into my driveway. The porch light was still on. Inside, I unlocked the drawer, took out the file, slipped in tonight's napkin, still faintly warm, another artifact of performance. I didn't need to read the contract. I already knew how their story ended. I had the last page. I walked up while they were still laughing. Glitter hung in the air. The DJ's voice bounced between rented chandeliers. Champagne flutes clinked. Someone dropped rose petals onto the dance floor like it was a movie set. Brandon stood next to Natalie, grinning. She held up her glass. Her father whispered something to a waiter who nodded and disappeared toward the bar. Then the DJ leaned into the mic. And now, before our couple cuts the cake, we'd love to hear a few words from the family. Applause, a few whistles. Someone called out Brandon's name. I stepped forward, calm, steady, folder in hand. Brandon spotted me first. His face tightened. Not fear, not yet, just confusion. Natalie smiled on reflex. I walked to the mic. I didn't ask for permission. I didn't wait for the DJ to adjust the volume. I set the manila folder on the table beside the cake knife. Then I looked at Brandon, then Natalie, then the crowd. My name is Eileen Klein, I said. I'm Brandon's mother. Quiet. Not total, but shifting. Like people sensed something was wrong. I'm here to clarify something before this party continues. Brandon stepped forward. Mom, maybe now isn't. I raised one hand. He stopped. I opened the folder. I've heard a lot about the plans for this wedding. The house renovations, the venue upgrades, the early honeymoon options. I pulled out the first sheet. This is the original trust document, dated and notarized, naming me as sole executor of Thomas's life insurance. Second page. This is the amendment. Filed 3 months ago. Restrictions added. Funds cannot be used for real estate events or non-medical expenses until 2035. Third page. This is a summary from my attorney. Affirming full legal control. Irrevocable clause. No transfer permissions. Silence deepened. I looked at Brandon. At no point were you ever entitled to the $900,000. Not legally, not ethically, and not as my son. I looked at Natalie. And you've been planning based on money that was never yours. The room froze. Chairs shifted. Phones slipped into laps. One waiter stopped mid-pour. Natalie blinked. Her mouth opened, then closed. Brandon's hands curled into fists. Why are you doing this? He said. Because I buried my brother alone, I said. Voice steady. While you toured vineyards. A whisper rolled through the guests. Natalie's father moved toward the stage. Her mother tried to signal something with her eyes. I picked up the folder, tucked the documents back in, and faced the crowd one last time. I wish you a beautiful wedding, I said, but you'll have to fund it yourselves. I walked off stage. The music didn't resume. The DJ just stood there. I passed Natalie's uncle, his mouth tight, his eyes narrowed. At the back of the room, Helen stood near the exit. She gave a small nod. Outside, the air hit different. Not cold, not warm, just clean. Behind me, the doors stayed shut. No one followed. I deleted the app. Didn't mute it. Didn't leave quietly. I held my finger down and pressed delete. Gone. Just like that. 24 hours earlier, they'd been posting engagement photos. Natalie in white, Brandon in beige, champagne in hand, gold balloons spelling "un to be." Now nothing. No calls, no texts, not even a knock at the door. Instead, I scrolled. Natalie's Instagram story was the first to light up. White cursive on a black background. Sometimes the people who raised you can't rise with you. Next slide. A blurry selfie of her, holding Brandon's hand across a table captioned, "Love doesn't need approval, just respect." I kept scrolling. Then the post. A photo of them sitting on stone steps outside a vineyard, backs turned, arms looped. Caption, "We'll build without help. Watch us." Comment section open. Dozens of hearts, fire emojis, hashtags. Then a single comment from someone I recognized, Natalie's uncle from the party. "Next time, don't count other people's money before the ink dries." No replies. No defense. Just silence. I closed the app. Later that afternoon, Helen stopped by with tea. She didn't ask. She just placed it on the counter and stood beside me. "You all right?" she asked. I nodded. "You don't look surprised." "I'm not." She waited, then added, "I heard her father pulled out of the payment plan for the reception hall. Said he's not covering anything until things settle." I didn't respond. "They're scrambling," she continued. "Word's out. Word always gets out, especially in a town this small, and especially when the party's so public and the truth's delivered with a mic." By evening, the family group chat Brandon's pride and joy was a ghost town. Natalie's mother left it first, then her cousin, then the planner. One by one, they disappeared. No questions, no fight, no apology. Just a line of so-and-so has left the group. I checked it once, then closed it again. Dinner was quiet. Just me and the radio. Outside, wind ticked against the windows. I washed the same mug I'd used that morning. Let the water run longer than needed. Watched it swirl down the drain. No one had asked if I was okay. No one had stopped by to say they understood or didn't, or wanted to hear my side. That part didn't sting as much as I thought it would. The silence wasn't empty. It was honest. When you remove the money, the crowd thins fast. I dried my hands, turned off the faucet, walked to the front room and sat in Thomas's old recliner. His folder was still locked in the fireproof cabinet, untouched, still mine. I didn't plan on unlocking it again soon. Whatever came next, they'd have to knock. I opened the email and dragged the files in one by one. Bank statements, screenshots, tax forms. Every document Rachel had told me to save. Dates highlighted, amounts circled. A clear trail. The last file was a PDF invoice from a reception hall in Columbus. Natalie's name on the booking, my address on the billing. $12,000 posted as pending transfer from an account that wasn't theirs. I stared at it. They hadn't even tried to hide it. I attached everything to a new message, typed Rachel's address, subject line, unauthorized transaction, immediate review. Hit send. Less than 2 minutes later, her reply came back. "Got it. Call me." I did. "This is bad," she said. "But in a way, it's good. They just left fingerprints all over the place. They used my address," I said. "They tried to make it look like you authorized it." I pressed my thumb against the edge of the desk. "Is that fraud?" "It's attempted," she said. "The venue hasn't processed the payment yet. We'll notify them before they do." I heard papers shuffling on her end. "Forward me the original invoice, too. I'll get the company on the line now." I did. Then waited. By evening, the call came back. Rachel's voice was crisp. "They've flagged the booking. No money moved. The venue manager is preparing a statement. They're calling it attempted fraud." I closed my eyes. Exhaled. "You'll need to be ready," she said. "This will get ugly fast." I hung up and opened my notebook. Wrote the date, the time. The word attempted underlined twice. The phone buzzed. Brandon. I didn't answer. His text followed. "This is a misunderstanding. Natalie's parents are taking care of it." Another, "Don't escalate this. We can fix it quietly." I set the phone down. Let the screen dim. Helen stopped by after dinner. I showed her the documents. "They tried to charge you," she said. They tried to make it look like I charged them. She shook her head. You were right to go to the lawyer. They think it's still their game, I said, but the board's changed. She put her hand over mine. Be ready. They won't stop here. When she left, the house went still again. Just the low hum of the fridge, the tick of the wall clock. I poured a cup of coffee, sat at the table, looked at the folder with all the evidence lined up like soldiers. They'd built their plans on money they didn't have, and now the ledger had started to talk back. I picked up my pen, wrote one more line in the notebook. Next step, prepare for retaliation. Then I closed it. I opened the door. Brandon stood on the step in a blazer too crisp for sincerity. No flowers, no apology. Just tight lips and a jaw that hadn't unclenched since the engagement party. You humiliated us, he said. I stepped aside. Let him in. Said nothing. He walked through like it was still his house. Like the air hadn't changed, like the rooms hadn't started answering to someone else. I went to the kitchen, took the kettle off the burner, poured coffee into one mug. He sat at the table. Didn't ask, didn't offer to help. Just waited. You could have handled that privately, he said. I sipped. Steam rose between us. I didn't blink. He leaned forward. Natalie's mom cried. Her uncle walked out. You didn't have to embarrass everyone like that. My cup clicked softly against the saucer. You planned a party on someone else's money. You made your announcement on borrowed ground. I was trying to build something, he snapped. A future. A marriage. With other people's bricks, I asked. He stood up. Paced. Then stopped. You used to believe in me. I still do, I said. But not in the version of you who thinks he's owed something just because he wants it. His mouth opened, closed again. I reached for the newspaper. Flipped to the crossword. I can't believe you'd pick this hill to die on, he muttered. I didn't look up. I already buried my brother. I don't have patience for fake funerals. He flinched. We sat in silence. He waited for the rhythm to shift, for some warmth, some softness. It didn't come. I shouldn't have come, he said finally. I nodded once. He headed for the door, stopped at the threshold. Turned halfway. You've changed. I met his eyes. No. I just stopped translating. He left. The door clicked behind him, soft but final. I stayed at the table. Coffee gone cold, crossword half filled. Quiet, folding itself around the house like a blanket. The silence wasn't peace. It was decision. And it was holding. I pushed the glass door open and stepped into the bank. The carpet smelled like stale coffee and copier ink. A young teller looked up startled, then gestured me toward the offices in the back. I'd called ahead. They were expecting me. The branch manager met me with a handshake. His suit was neat, but his eyes were tired. Mrs. Klein. This way. We sat in a small room with a frosted window. I placed my folder on the table and opened it to the marked pages. He read, nodding. You'd like to update your emergency contact and beneficiary. Yes. He typed quickly. Current names on file, I said them out loud. Brandon Mercer, Natalie Mercer. Both listed as emergency contacts. Brandon listed as contingent beneficiary in case of death. He confirmed on his screen. All right, we'll remove them. Who would you like? Added Helen Drake, I said. Same address as on this form, he typed. And for the contingent beneficiary, no one for now. He hesitated. You can leave it blank. It will default to your estate. Leave it blank. He nodded. Printed 2 forms, slid them across the desk. Sign here and here. I signed without a tremor. He stamped both forms. Changes effective immediately. I gathered my folder, closed it, stood. Do you need new cards, new online access? He asked. No. Just the locks changed. He smiled faintly, not understanding but polite enough not to ask. Outside, the air felt sharper. The bank doors closed behind me with a soft whoosh. My footsteps echoed on the sidewalk. I walked past shop windows filled with dresses, cakes, invitation templates. I didn't look in. Halfway home, my phone buzzed. Brandon again. I let it buzz until it stopped. His voicemail icon blinked. I didn't listen. At the corner, a group of teenagers crossed the street, laughing, arms linked. One of them held a coffee from the shop Thomas used to frequent. The smell drifted over. Bitter. Clean. I kept walking. My house appeared at the end of the block. Porch light still on. Curtains drawn. Helen's car gone. I unlocked the front door. Set the folder on the kitchen table. Poured myself a fresh cup. The paperwork was done. The names were changed. The locks legal and otherwise no longer matched their keys. I sat down and wrapped both hands around the mug. They wouldn't know yet. Not until they tried. I slid the screen door open and stepped out into the light. The wood groaned beneath my feet. The air carried that late spring weight, warm but still sharp around the edges. I sat in the chair Thomas built back when the porch was new. Before hospitals, before folders, before trust lawyers and tax filings, and last names not worth repeating. I set the mug down on the small side table. Still mine. Not a gift, not a joke, just true. The deed lay locked in the cabinet. Final, filed, stamped, witnessed. The trust couldn't be touched, not without a court battle, and not with the evidence trail I'd built. They hadn't called in days. No messages, no voicemails, no quotes about family or betrayal or love as currency. Natalie's account had gone quiet. Brandon's number didn't buzz anymore. I hadn't blocked them. I'd just stopped answering. I took a slow sip of coffee. Black. Bitter. Honest. 2 weeks from now, they'd walk down some aisle. Music playing, guests smiling, cameras clicking. I wouldn't be there. My name wouldn't be in the program. There'd be no speech, no blessing, no check. But I'd still have the porch, the house, the truth. Helen had offered to come by that morning. I told her no need. The quiet felt earned, not empty, not lonely. Earned. It hadn't been revenge. It hadn't even been justice. It had been a correction, a steady, silent turn back toward what was mine. I picked up the mug again. Let the heat fill both hands. They'd never believed I'd say no. They'd assumed I wouldn't notice, wouldn't resist, wouldn't matter. They were wrong. And now they couldn't look away from the answer I'd never spoken. I took another sip and let the silence hold.